Today is April 11, 2001. My name is Brianna Gamboa. I'm interviewing Judanny Rodriguez for the University Library Special Collections and Archives at the University of Texas Rio Grande Valley, hereafter abbreviated as UTRGV. This project is in partnership with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. Please know, Ms. Rodriguez, that this interview will be placed in the University Library Special Collections and Archives at UTRGV and shared with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. If there is anything you do not wish to answer or talk about, I will honor your wishes. Also, if there is something you want to talk about, please bring it up and we'll talk about it. The University Library's Special Collection and Archives will archive your interview along with any other photographs and other documentation you are willing to share. UTRGV University Library will retain copyright or non-exclusive right to the interview and any other materials you donate to Special Collections and Archives at UTRGV. Because we are not conducting this interview in person, I need to record you consenting to make sure you agree with our interview procedures before we continue. So I'll ask you a series of 6 questions. Please say, yes, I agree, or no, I do not agree after each question. Question 1. Do you give University Library Special Collection and Archives at UTRGV consent to archive your interview and your materials at the UTRGV University Library?
Yes, I agree.
Question 2. Do you grant UTRGV University Library Special Collections and Archives right, title, and interest in copyright over the interview and any materials you provide?
Yes, I agree.
Question 3. Do you agree to allow UTRGV University Library Special Collection and Archives to post this interview on the internet where it may be viewed by people around the world?
Yes, I agree.
Question 4. Do you grant the University Library Special Collections and Archives consent to share your Zoom interview with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin for inclusion in the Voices of Pandemic Oral History mini project, which will include posting the interview on the internet?
Yes, I agree.
As you recall, we previously filled out a pre-interview form. We use information from the pre-interview form to help in research. The entire form is kept in secure Voces server at the University of Texas at Austin. Before Voces sends in UTRGV University Library Special Collection and Archives, we would have stripped out any contact information for yourself or family members, so that will not be part of your public file. Your public file will only be accessible at UTRGV University Library. The final 2 questions ask for your consent on what I just described. Question 5. Do you wish for us to share the rest of your interview in your public file available to researchers at UTRGV University Library Special Collections and Archives?
Yes, I agree.
Question 6. On occasion, UTRGV Special Collections and Archives and Voces receive requests from journalists. Do you wish to contact our interview subjects? We only deal with legitimate news outlets. Do you give consent for us to share your phone numbers or your email with journalists?
Yes, I agree.
Thank you for your consent. Your experience and stories mean a lot to us at UTRGV Special Collections and Archives. I look forward to what you say in your interview questions. I will now ask. Judanny, thank you for your time. Your stories and experiences are valuable to us at UTRGV Special Collections and Archives and the Voces Project. Particularly for us at UTRGV Special Collections, we are committed to preserving the stories of Mexican Americans and Latinos from South Texas and the Rio Grande Valley, and those who work closely with these populations during the COVID-19 pandemic. Because you are an essential worker that oversees many employees, you hear the troubles of adjusting due to COVID-19 from your employees and people in general that call the work center. You have many important stories and experiences from the point of view as a daughter, sister, cousin, and aunt that have shaped your life and others around you. Thank you for sharing your experiences so far with COVID-19. So before I ask you to share stories about your life in this pandemic, tell us, who is Judanny Rodriguez? Feel free to share when you were born, where did you grow up, graduate, hobbies, etc.
So I was born in Wasaco, Texas. here in the Rio Grande Valley. I've been living here for the past 36 years. I am a PSJ alumni, class of 2003. Um, I grew up family oriented, um, and I enjoy going to the beach, which I have not gone. That's why my background is this. Um, and just hanging out with family and friends, just pretty much it.
Thank you. So question one. So the first question I want to ask you is, when did you first hear about COVID-19? How did you learn about it? Did you hear it on the radio, a TV, people talking about it, social media?
So when I first had heard about it, I heard about it from one of my coworkers, Crystal. But I just figured it was just one of those like random things that you hear, but was not true in the media. She's a little bit of a conspiracy theorist, so I really didn't quite believe it when she first told me about it. So I just kind of put it in the background. Um, the second time that it was mentioned to me, which I took a bit more serious and it actually was concerning, was when my boyfriend told me about it. And this was around January, February, somewhere around there. And that's when I took real note of it.
What was your first reaction to the information about COVID-19?
The initial one was just, it was a lie. Um, Thinking that it wasn't true. I mean, so many things that you hear nowadays from, you know, various sources of TV, social media, things like that. So many things that are not true. So I've just kind of brushed it off. I didn't believe it.
At what point did you realize the pandemic was a serious life-altering event, or did you not realize it, or you didn't think it was serious?
In the beginning, I didn't, like I mentioned, but not until my boyfriend started talking to me about it a little bit more. Then that's when I started doing my own research about it. And that's when it was hitting hard in China and in the UK. And it just became the monster that it is. So around that time, that's when I took serious note of it.
Did you think that it would impact like Texas so quick or so fast from hearing it all over in social media?
I honestly didn't, only because I've known in the past there's been other infections, other diseases that have happened, globally in other parts of the world. So, I mean, they were always able to contain it. So I just figured, like, okay, just kind of be like a little bit, notice little things, but it didn't really make me think that it was actually going to come here to the States and ultimately be what it is now. Because even with the SARS, before they were able to contain it and, everything was pretty fine. But I mean, that was pretty much it.
Over the last few months, what news media, social media, or other resources do you rely on to keep your information about the coronavirus or COVID-19?
Um, I go based on the medical documents that are published, especially for like the trials and results. That's what I go based off of because a lot of things get jumbled in the news and also in social media. Social media, I think, is like the worst case scenario. Um, but that's what I use as my resource.
Can you share with me what you understand about COVID-19 as an infectious disease and any of its variants? Likewise, can you share with me what you don't understand about the coronavirus?
From my understanding from the coronavirus, it's just a severe respiratory infection that you can catch, through um, particles in the air um, from somebody who's been infected from it. There's different variants that have progressed from the initial one, but some of them are a little bit more severe, a little bit more contagious. Um, there's new reports saying that certain vaccines um, don't quite, uh, or I'm sorry, not quite effective with the vaccine, but it just boosts it down to like a 91%, where it initially was a 95%. Um, as far as for the infection goes, if you do contract COVID-19, there's a variety of symptoms that you may manifest. Of course, having health concerns or health conditions already established does create an impact, but at the same time, I mean, it's a luck of the draw. There's been some people who have been reported that have various health conditions but are over to overcome it, and yet healthy people who are getting infected um, don't make it, or if not, get the severe end of it. So it just really depends, I guess, on somebody's immune system.
Can you tell me what you know about the various vaccines available to the public? How do you feel about these vaccines?
I am pretty confident with the vaccines. Obviously, I take my flu vaccine every single year. Um, I am pro vaccine. I think they are there for a reason to help you out, especially with any type of infections, diseases that might be out there that plague the world. For right now, the only ones that I know that are out are the Pfizer one, the Moderna, and the Johnson and Johnson vaccine.
Do you have a vaccination story you would like to share with me now or perhaps later in on the interview?
We can go ahead and discuss my vaccine story later on in the interview.
Okay, thank you. Do your family members hold the same beliefs as you about COVID-19, or are there some who take it more seriously or lightly?
I honestly think I am the paranoid one in my family. So I think I'm the severe one in my family. Everybody else is kind of a little bit, a level further down me. Um, but I think as time has gone by, they're a little bit more relaxed when it comes to the COVID-19.
What makes you think that you're like the most paranoid one, or why do you believe you're the most paranoid one out of your family?
Because I don't stop looking at stuff online when it comes to the medical records and how many people get COVID or how many positives there have been on a day. Every time that I go into a store, I get paranoid. I make sure that everybody in my family has masks, has Germex, have antibacterial spray. I spray them sometimes down coming into my vehicle, back into the car, um, versus everybody else is just kind of like, eh.
Okay. For these next set of questions, I'd like to talk about how you've seen COVID-19 affect family members, friends, and relationships. Was there anything you saw change in people as the pandemic um as the pandemic progressed? So your sister and her two children ended up moving in with you and your mother during the pandemic. How do you feel this move increased the risk factor of contracting the virus, having 5 people going to separate places and ending up back in one home?
I mean, it's a little bit worrisome, but I mean, you just gotta have the belief that they're doing their best practices to, wash their hands, wear their mask, be responsible as far as who they interact with. Like I mentioned, I'm the most paranoid one, and I keep on putting out information to them to where I think, maybe I did get them a bit paranoid, but not as severe as me.
Was it difficult to ensure everyone's safety in the household? How did you all work together to disinfect your house and stay healthy? Did any conflicts arise or disagreements about how to keep a COVID-free home?
Not really. I think everybody's been pretty good. I mean, we sanitize, we wipe down as much as we possibly can. We take showers, we wash clothing as frequently as possible. If somebody happens to fall ill, even if it's like for allergies and everything like that, we make sure that we're on top of the medication. And even at that, we have a surplus of vitamins that we take almost on a daily, monthly regimen. So it's been pretty productive. It works for our family.
You mentioned at one point you were in isolation. Can you tell me why you had to isolate?
I was actually in isolation twice. The first time was because one of my coworkers felt ill, and I did have an interaction with her at work while we were still working before we got sent home from work. Um, I got a call from our HR telling us that not until the pending results were received that I had to be in isolation. So I secluded myself in my 10 by 12 room with hand sanitizer, with disinfectant spray, um, wore my mask, my vitamins, everything. The second time, um, it was by a third party, if you will. HR did not notify me or anything like that, but they did notify the individual that I was in contact with. So I just took an additional precaution to isolate myself at that point. Um, we do have another house in Alamo, where originally was my sister's or is my sister's house. So because it was vacant at that time, I went ahead and just stayed. I believe it was a total of 6 days, if I'm not mistaken, there where, I just maintained the same regimen where, I had hand sanitizer, I had disinfectant spray, took my regimen of medicines, vitamins, everything that I needed to do, and just waited it out. And thank God, both times, everything was cleared. So I was able to rejoin with my family or my immediate family.
That's good. Can you tell me like your thought process or like what was going through your head when you initially had to isolate not once but twice?
The first time, I was freaking out, because at that time I did not. Obviously, nobody had the vaccine, so I unfortunately have medical conditions. So I pretty much figured like there's no way I'm gonna make it if I do happen to contract it. So I was freaking out. I probably cried 2 times in the very first beginning. After that, I just let it be. Where if it happens, it happens. It's ni modo. That's what happens. But I was freaking out.
Your niece and nephew are attending school, as you mentioned in the pre-interview, and most schools have it averted to online schooling. What grades are they in, and how have they adjusted to remote learning? Do you and your sister help them with their schoolwork more during the pandemic?
So I would like to say that I do help out. However, if I ask my nephew, he says that he's good and he already turned in everything. Um, Unfortunately, we end up to find out later on that he has missing assignments. So that's probably not working out to our best interest with being on top of him. He's in the 6th grade. My niece, I believe she's a junior in college. Um, I've helped out with like little projects of hers here and there, but that's been pretty much it.
You mentioned some problems surfaced between you and your boyfriend about safety regulations. Can you explain this more?
So my boyfriend and his family ended up contracting COVID-19, very close proximity to each other, right? Um, Unfortunately, his grandmother ended up passing away. So, in his grandmother's passing away, obviously there has to be the funeral, the viewing, and of course the burial, right? So, this was in a short amount of time frame where they came out positive. Um, so they made plans to still wanting to go to the funeral with other family members that were going to pay their respects to their grandmother. Um, and I did have an issue with that only because, you hear it in the news, you hear it from the CDC that you're supposed to isolate yourself in order to avoid infecting others where this can stop. Um, so we just kept going back and forth that he didn't understand why I was getting so upset, that it was just going to be real quick. I kept explaining to him that you don't know what other family members might be going through, and the same result might end up happening where they might get infected as well, and maybe it eventually will end up severe to the point where they may lose their loved one as well. So that caused a rift between us for a good while, and we kept on going back and forth for that entire week. Um, his grandmother, I'm sorry, he did not end up going to his grandmother's funeral, which ended up causing a bigger rift between us because now he was putting all that on me as far as his anger and everything. His mother and his other family members that were positive did end up going. I actually ended up finding out where the funeral was going to be at, and I did call county here and let them know about what was going on, that they were positive. Because in my belief, I mean, as much as I do care for his family, but my priority is the safety of everybody. So I did call and I did let them know that they were positive. So they did have to go and talk to them, and pay them a visit prior to the funeral services. Just letting them know and reminding them that if they do happen to be positive and if they are caught outside and not isolating, that they were going to end up being fined. Of course, that was the requirements back then. Um, when it became such a big hot zone here in the valley. Um, so that ended up happening. And then that caused a big rift between, like I mentioned, between me and my boyfriend for a couple of months. Um, we're good now. He fully understands why I did what I did. Because I told him that I would do it again in a heartbeat because, again, it's my main concern is the safety of everybody. But now he fully understands and he gets it and he understands why.
I'm glad you guys were able to work that out. You mentioned that your mother is an essential worker. What essential work does she do?
Um, one of the main chain stores, Dollar General. So she is a third key holder. So she is there pretty much 5 days out of the week, sometimes 6 days out of the week. Um, Stocking, cashing, opening the store, closing the store, going to the bank, and so forth.
Have you noticed your mom has been impacted by COVID-19 at her job?
She is aware. She has been impacted. Thankfully, nobody from her work has had the virus. They did have to take additional safety precautions in the store, and even at that, she took it a step further to buy additional disinfectants that she had around, or she just bought, and she ends up spraying around in the store as well.
How do you feel you and your sister having your mother continue to work, especially because she's at high risk for contracting the virus?
I told her once the valley became a hot zone that I needed her to quit. She unfortunately told me that I was crazy, of course, Spanish, and that she wasn't going to quit, that things happen in the world and you're not able to control them, and she was still going to have to work in order to, pay bills, and keep food on the table.
You mentioned that family members have gotten COVID-19. How many?
Our family, I want to say we ended up having 4 people that contracted the virus.
And were you able to help in any way possible?
I did. I ended up getting them vitamins, teas. I also took them additional like things like disinfectant, antibacterial wipes, things like that, to kind of help out because since the family that ended up contracting the virus, they are all in the same house. So it was very, very critical, at least to me, and I'm sure to them as well, to make sure that nobody else contracted the virus within the same household, especially since there were some children also coming in and out of the house.
How did the pandemic impact family traditions, customs, and holiday celebrations? For example, did you celebrate birthdays and Christmases differently? Did you have a traditional Thanksgiving?
Since the pandemic happened, we have not really seen our family members. We don't even do the whole passing by at the house for birthdays or anything like that. You just never know. I haven't seen my family in a long time, so it's usually anything when I'm dropping off stuff or when they're dropping off stuff when we need something. But even at that, it's just from a far distance, and that's it.
If you attended any weddings, graduations, or funerals, how did the pandemic make these events different from pre-pandemic times?
As much as I have not attended any birthday parties, weddings, or anything of that nature, only because I just don't know. I don't want to attend and something end up happening and they bring it back to my house with my family. I wouldn't be able to forgive myself for it.
These next set of questions focus on your stories and experiences as an essential worker in the time of COVID-19. Can you please describe your work? What does this company do, or what do you do?
I work at a call center for the state. We handle calls from the Health and Human Services Commission in regards to benefits that the state of Texas claims that individuals from the state of Texas may have.
Just as a formality, how long have you worked at this call center?
10 years.
How did you come to be a supervisor?
I became a supervisor because there was a position available back 6 or 7 years ago. I applied, I got the position, and ever since then I've been a supervisor.
When you first heard about COVID-19, what were your initial thoughts for work?
Call center were 400 people that are in close proximity to each other. And I thought, oh my God, it's gonna happen.
How did your work ensure the safety of its employees?
Quickly came on board along with a doctor from the company to monitor the COVID situation along with necessary precautions. And even though it started here in the valley in March of 2020, we started deploying people to work at home towards the end of April. So it took our company around a month or so to be able to get enough peripherals to send people, or at least to start sending people home.
What were your employees' remarks when they were told that they could not work from home?
They were concerned, of course, like anybody would. We kept monitoring the situation, making sure that everybody was okay. Taking the necessary precautions as far as screening processes in case they were a bit ill. That way they won't be able to come into the building, just like safety precautions, until we got all the equipment to start sending people home.
You mentioned that you tried to explain to higher management about the working conditions due to COVID-19. How did that work out?
was the cleaning. So we do have a cleaning group in our call center. They do a very, very good job with the cleaning. However, considering that we had actually a surplus of 400 people, it was a little bit concerning to me that just two individuals was not going to cut it. So that was brought into management along with the committee, and they started quickly implementing where they were going to hire more individuals to do deep cleaning every single day.
Eventually, you and the employees were approved to work from home. What was that like? Because your sister also was working with you, and you all live in the same house, and two children, and they're also doing their online school. How was that?
It was interesting. I prepped the house. I bought a router, um, which I don't even know how a router works. I had to look into that because to me it was just you have internet, you connect to Wi-Fi. That's pretty much it. But since our company entails having a certain amount of speed for both of our laptops and peripherals, so I had to invest in that. Luckily, I was able to get one before everybody started grabbing them. Um, so I had to make the preparations like that. And then there's Ethernet cables all over the house, including some of the rooms, just to supply the speed as well with the necessities from our work. But everybody was content once we did get the go ahead to work from home, including us and the employees. It did take a time, but gradually we got there.
So, being a supervisor and having to work with other employees, how is it managing work morale from your team during the pandemic?
It's difficult. I'm not gonna lie. It's very difficult to help out with morale, especially when we don't have that interaction like we used to with our employees. So there's a little bit of a detachment on there. The one things that we strive for with our company to boost morale is come up with incentives for them. Plus, when we do end up having meetings with them, we do ask that everybody turns on their video. That way we can have that little face-to-face time, just letting them know that we're still here for them.
How has the pandemic affected your job and like the way you go from getting up in the morning to being on a computer 24/7?
I literally roll out of my bed. Um, my I've saved a lot of money on makeup um, and clothing because from working from home, I mean, I literally roll out of bed in my PJs and my desk is right next to my bed. So it's literally just like 2 steps and I'm already at work. Um, the only thing is that I am a social butterfly. So that's the thing that I do miss. I miss the camaraderie with my team, with my peers, with my managers. Um, that's the only thing that I do miss because I mean, here I just look at the 3 screens. Once in a while, I will see my nephews, especially during lunchtime and things like that. So that does make me happy. Um, but it's only for a shorter amount of time because obviously I have to go back to work and they have to continue on doing their schoolwork.
Well, with the vaccine being created and schools opening back up, has your job mentioned opening back up? And if so, how do you feel about that? Like, would you go back or would you stay from working at home?
So I do not like working from home because I feel like my light is dimming again because I'm a social butterfly. Um, I'm a little weary, but I've had the vaccine. I don't know how work is going to implement us going back to work. They are going to revisit the situation again in the summertime. As of right now, from my understanding, the only thing that they are reopening is the break room. However, the individuals that are allowed to be in the break room have to be fully vaccinated with both vaccines. And even at that, they still have to follow some of the CDC guidelines, which is the social distancing. But the break room can be open to eat now, and it's nice when I do go back to work once in a while, to see the table set up again. So it's kind of exciting and it's kind of scary at the same time.
These next set of questions focuses on your stories and experiences with the COVID-19 vaccine. So you mentioned you joined the clinical trial for the first COVID-19 vaccine. Why did you join the trial?
It's a variety of reasons why I joined the trial. Like I mentioned earlier, I do have some health conditions, actually, several health conditions, um, that I'm pretty sure that I wouldn't have survived the COVID if I would have ended up having it. So that played a part with wanting to see if maybe if I did get lucky with getting the vaccine, if maybe, I was able to survive it. The other part of me was for, sorry. Um, the other reason why I wanted to participate is because when else can you say that you helped out, pretty much the world with, um, finding a solution to something that was unfortunately ending the lives of a lot of people. So I've never been able to join the military or anything like that. Kudos to everybody who served in the military. But this is my small way of like participating and helping out. So for those two reasons, that's why I decided to join the trial.
What was your thought process when you received the first shot? Because they don't tell you if you get the real vaccine or the fake one.
hmm I had mixed emotions when I sat there waiting to get vaccinated. Um, I had the quick little fear of what are you doing? You don't know how you're gonna react. You're gonna turn into a zombie. Um, but I mean, I still sat there, and they injected me. They only told me not to look at the injection because I guess they do have a marking, whether you got the placebo or the full vaccine. So I just had to turn my head and just wait it out to see. They had told us a variety of symptoms that we can have in regards to the vaccine. So just to be on the lookout for that for the next 7 days. So yeah,
You also mentioned that you told your sister about the trial, and right after she said she would join the trial too. Why did she?
she thinks it's cool. Uh, she wanted to try it out too. I mean, I was a little hesitant for her to do it because again, since it was in the trial phases, we don't know the type of reactions, and since it's only my sister and I, in case something went severely wrong with me, I don't want my mother and my nephews to like wind up by themselves.
You both kept this a secret from your mother. Did you and your sister feel like she wouldn't approve?
She would not approve, mostly because she believes that we're not test subjects for anybody. Plus the safety precautions that you don't know what's going to end up happening. Um, so that's why we ended up keeping it a secret from her.
Has she found out about it? Only if you wish to answer.
I have told her white lies. And by white lies, I mean I told her that my sister and I, and this was recently, this was probably like a month ago. Um, I told her that both my sister and I had gotten the vaccine early on from a clinic, which is true. Um, and I told her every so often we go and do blood work because we're in a study to see how the antibodies are still present. And that's it. So she doesn't know that we are actually the test subjects of the vaccine. She hasn't put it all together.
Did you tell any friends that you were in the trial for the first vaccine? What were their initial responses?
So I have two sets of group of friends. My closest ones, which I told immediately, even before the vaccine trial was here, when it was in the beginning phases in New York, when that was a hot zone area. I told them that if the vaccine trials were to be here, that I would like to participate. Both of them were a bit hesitant. They didn't quite understand why I would do it. But then when it came to the valley, uh, one of my friends even ended up telling me that she saw it in the news and she was praying that I didn't see it and she was not going to send it to me. But of course, that was the same day that I saw it and I told her I'm doing it. My other friend told me to be careful and to rethink it as much as possible. And then my other set of friends um, joined in the hysteria of you're going to turn into a zombie. If you do happen to turn into a zombie, we will keep you. We would just kind of put you in a little cage if you do happen to turn into a zombie, but we won't cause any harm to you. We'll just keep you there because you're our friend.
Did you tell your niece or nephew about you being in the trial? What were their reactions?
Um, we told my niece. Uh, she just kind of like questioned it for a little bit, but afterwards, when she realized that nothing happened, I guess she was okay with it. And my nephew, I ended up telling him on later on, um, sooner than my mother, about the vaccine, and he had questions about it, about why would I do it, and so forth. So I just told him the same thing, you know, and he was understanding about it, and he thinks it's pretty cool now.
Did you have any reactions to the first vaccine, the first shot?
The first reaction that I got with the first one, and I got the Moderna one back in August. The only thing that I had was the following day after, I had soreness of my arm, which was fine. It was doable, nothing big. The second day after the vaccine, my arm was full on in pain. I took medication for arthritis because, they're the heavy hitter milligrams. And not even that was helping. I couldn't move it at all, couldn't even lift it. It felt really weird. Um, then the following day, which is the third day after the vaccine, it felt sore again. So I figured since it's already sore again, most likely by the fourth day I would be fine. And sure enough, by the fourth day, nothing happened.
Was there any testing that you had to undergo when you received the first shot, or like were you allowed to take the first shot?
I had to go through a variety of detailed information and medical notations with the nurse and the doctors there. Of course, they did do a quick little. It wasn't a physical. It was more kind of. They check your um, vitals, um, and then of course you had to have answered like a variety of questionnaire about like your health. There was a concern with mine where they did have to escalate it a little bit further, only because they didn't know if I was going to be able to participate with the trial. Um, because I do have lupus anticoagulant, which that was one of the requirements when you sign up for the trial, that you cannot be on any immunosuppressants medication. But I let them know that I've never been prescribed that, and the only effect to that has been, or the only recommendation to that has been to just take baby aspirin. So because of that, they gave me the green light to go ahead and proceed. And aside from that, the medications, vitamins that I take, and also a COVID test, which I had to pass. And by pass, I mean be negative. and also be negative with the antibody tests, because obviously if you would have been positive, you would have already contracted the virus, and they were needing individuals who hadn't gotten the virus as of yet.
How did it make you feel when you were told that you actually received the actual trial vaccine?
I was happy. I'm not gonna lie. I was happy that I did actually get the vaccine. I got told this on my birthday, um, when they did the unblinding, because of course the vaccines were already out to the public. Um, it was nice knowing that I was fully vaccinated in September. Um, but of course, that wouldn't have changed anything, because I'm not going to live my best life just because I have the vaccine.
How did you feel when you received the second dose for the COVID-19 vaccine? Were there any complications?
No, there wasn't any complications. I did get some side effects though. Um, like I mentioned, I did get the second one in September. That one I did not get any arm pain, any soreness, or anything like that. The only thing that I did get was a low grade fever, um, which I closely monitored as soon as I started seeing that my temperature was a little bit high, um, than the normal. Once it got to 101, I just decided to take um, medication real quick over the counter, to see if it would stop it, because of course I'm not trying to wind up at a hospital or anything like that because of a high grade fever. So I did take the medication, drank fluids, did everything that you normally do when you do have a fever. And by the afternoon of the same day, it broke, and I was sweating very, very profusely and disgustingly. Um, but that was the only thing that happened to me. After that, it was like any normal day.
Has anyone else in your family or friends received the COVID-19 vaccine? If so, like, how was their experiences, or how was the experience of them finding a vaccine?
So it's been a very difficult situation on finding the vaccine, especially a couple of weeks ago. It seems that everybody was on a run. Um, I even saw in the news that people were vaccine hunters, something like that, to that effect. They were hanging out at the pharmacies late at night just to see if anybody was not getting their vaccine. That way they can kind of cut in there. Um, my mother, because she is an elderly person and because she still works, it was very difficult for her to get the vaccine, which that was my main priority, along with my niece, who was of age, or who is of age, to take the vaccine. So we ended up having them. Um, we ended up having to sign them up in CVS all the way to Raymondville. So I'm sorry, not to Raymondville, to Kingsville. Um, my other family members ended up having the vaccine at the hospital, where they signed up for it. I, however, was not that lucky to be able to have signed up my nephew. I'm sorry, my niece and my mother. So that's why we ended up going all the way to Kingsville for their vaccines.
Um, to close off, I'll ask you some final questions. Are you satisfied with the local response to COVID-19 in San Juan and Hidalgo County?
I am pleasantly pleased with their response as far as them keeping track of the numbers and giving us information in regards to that. What I'm not pleased about is the way the vaccines were handled. The reason why I say this, and it wasn't just here in San Juan, it was just in Hidalgo County. They would announce the vaccines availability a couple minutes before they actually opened it up. However, when you were able to get to the destination, they were already out. So it seemed that, there was a little bit of information that was being disclosed to possibly immediate family members of those who knew about these vaccines. That's the only thing that I found um, not great as far as us handling it.
Are you satisfied with the state response to COVID-19 led by Texas and Governor Greg Abbott?
I had been up until the governor decided to not mandate masks anymore.
What was your initial response to that?
We're still in it, sir. So still wear your mask.
Are you satisfied with the current national response to COVID-19 led by President Biden and his administration?
I am. They are still believing that we should still take all necessary precautions, which I am in agreement with because we're still in it. We might be in it for a couple more months until we all fully get vaccinated. It's going to take a while, but I still fully believe and support that we should do our own part, even if certain governors or other representatives may not agree. That's the only way that we're going to be able to overcome it.
If you had the power to respond to COVID-19 with policies, laws, or workplace decisions, what would you do differently, if anything?
For one, I would reinstate the mandate for people to wear masks. Of course, getting the vaccine is, as of right now, it's, if you want to receive the vaccine, I would ask the public to get the vaccine. Make it mandatory for everybody, same as the other types of vaccines that we have received as children. Because this is something that I think has greatly impacted everybody. So we need to get a good grasp of it and a hold of it in order for it to end. So making the vaccine mandatory would be something that would need to be needed. Until then, of course, still the mask as well.
Are there any other stories or experiences you would like to share with me that I have not asked?
No, not that I can think of.
Okay. Thank you for your participation, Ms. Judanny Rodriguez. It has been a joy interviewing you. Thank you for sharing your experiences and stories. This is Brianna Gamboa ending the interview.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.